Hello, I'm Sailaja Menon. I'm a licensed psychologist at LifeWorks. Today's audio talk is going to be about depression and sadness. We all will agree that we use the term depression so very commonly and loosely in our day to day lives. When we really think about depression, what comes to our mind is sadness. However, what we do not realize is we tend to overestimate a very normal emotional reaction and underestimate a major psychological disorder. So, in this particular audio talk, we will be going into discussing some major differences between depression and sadness and also helping you to define your symptoms within these two psychological states such that you could get your symptoms accurately diagnosed and treated by a professional if you decide to seek treatment. So, with that, happy hearing, take care, and stay safe. Today, we are going to be talking about depression and sadness. As we are all easing through lockdown to get back to a new normal, not being totally certain of what is in store, it's only normal for our sense of sadness to heighten in ways that we feel difficult to explain. It's indeed a frightening time when we are in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, not knowing what to expect and what may come next. With such intense and immense uncertainty, it's only natural that most of us, if not all, will experience sadness, anxiety, fear, worry, knowing that there might be some more to come and the state of uncertainty could linger longer. Considering what we are going through, it might be common for millions of people around the world to experience intense sadness at a time like this. However, recognizing the difference between a diagnosis of depression and sadness can help a person to process both in a healthy way. People often tend to overuse the term depression in our day-to-day lives, that many times we are magnifying a normal emotional state like sadness. And in the process, we are neglecting a severe psychological condition. We have to be careful that by using the term depression so loosely in our day-to-day lives, sometimes we might actually be underplaying a major mental health disorder. Yes, depression and sadness are linked, but they are not the same. It's vital at a time like this, and considering the emotional roller coaster we are all riding through, it is important to understand the difference between these two psychological states such that our anxiety can be better controlled with the right diagnosis. When we hear the word depression, what we all associate and visualize is someone in deep sadness, crying bouts, and feeling loudly. This by itself is one of the key reasons that we struggle to tell the difference between sadness and depression and understand that both these psychological states have very different course of treatment. So let us take a few minutes and understand what are some broad differences between depression and sadness. First of all, depression is an abnormal emotional state, whereas sadness is a normal emotional state. Second, depression is an overpowering and ongoing mental health disorder that can drastically impact our daily lives. It can affect our thinking, emotions, perceptions, and behaviors in very persistent, pervasive, and chronic ways. It takes away joy, it takes away energy from our lives. We feel totally zapped out. We feel there's no happiness, no sense of excitement, no pleasure, no sense of satisfaction in our lives. We tend to break down easily, we get angry, frustrated quickly. All in all, we notice that our thresholds have become so much lower, and it takes a lot longer for us to bounce back to everything. But then with sadness, it's an emotion that every one of us experience in our current situation. Especially at COVID-19, it's an unexpected, distressful event. Therefore, the possibility of experiencing this emotion of sadness is really expected. When you are sad, you are angry, you're irritated, you might even vent, you might cry it out, You might talk it out with a friend or a loved one, or sometimes you might seek professional counseling to get a clarity on the situation and to overcome it. You bounce back a lot quicker when you realize that your sadness is starting to fade and it is being replaced with changes and the right coping strategies to move forward. Sadness is quite situational and stays as long as the situation that caused sadness starts to fade. Number 3, depression may not necessarily have an identifiable cause. Depression does not necessarily require a difficult event or situation or loss or a change of circumstance as a trigger. In fact, it often occurs in the absence of any such triggers. People might have a good life and might look totally fine, but then you might see that when you speak to them, they would share that they are actually feeling so horrible. Depression can last a lot longer, even years if not treated. And remember, sadness is only a small part of depression, but it's also more temporary in nature. Now, when we talk about sadness, it's always caused by a specific trigger. For example, job loss, falling ill, fear of falling ill, uncertainty, death, financial loss, inability to reunite with your loved ones in your home country, like what many are going through right now, fear for the well-being and safety of your family, anticipation of the future. Sadness is something we all experience, and believe me, we are going to be experiencing a lot more in our lifetime. It's always almost triggered by a challenging, uncertain, hurtful, or disappointing event, experience, or situation. In other words, something that makes us sad. However, it's important to be aware that when that something changes or gets better, our sadness also will fade, considering our emotion has gotten adjusted to the change of something better. Number 4, depression is a mental disorder that has a very powerful and overwhelming impact on several aspects of an individual's life. It can occur in people of any gender or age and alters behaviors and attitudes. For example, some symptoms that I could kind of highlight would be feelings of discouragement, sadness, hopelessness, lack of motivation, a loss of interest in activities that the individual once found enjoyable. In severe cases, they could even feel that they would not want to live. They may no longer want to kind of spend time with family or friends and might stop pursuing their habits or feel unable to attend work. Sadness can usually find some relief from crying, venting, or talking out frustrations. More often than not, sadness has links to a specific trigger. Sadness usually passes with time. If it does not pass, or if the person becomes unable to resume normal function, this could be a sign of depression. So watch out. When we talk about sadness, it's generally quite temporary. However, you notice that it's kind of lingering a lot longer and it's kind of quite consistent in terms of the low mood, and you find that that low mood is getting worse or it's lasting longer than 2 weeks, then I think the person should be talking to a doctor, because it could kind of be developing to something bigger than just sadness. Now let's kind of go now to talk about, are you depressed or are you just sad? Now, how do we really understand and define the symptoms under these specific psychological states, whether it's depression or whether it's sadness? So to be diagnosed if you're depressed or sad, people need to have at least 5 of the following symptoms for a continual duration of at least 2 weeks. And also be advised that the severity of the symptoms is a must to consider for a mental health professional to diagnose you accurately. So let's kind of talk about what are those 10 major symptoms. And remember, you need to be having 5 of these symptoms for 2 weeks in a consistent, constant manner. The first one is a depressed or irritable mood most of the time. Number 2, a loss or decrease of pleasure or interest in most activities, including ones that has been very interesting or pleasurable previously. Significant changes in your weight or your appetite. disturbances in falling asleep, or you tend to sleep too much, your inability to concentrate, feeling slowed down in your movements or restless most days, feeling tired, sluggish, and having low energy most days, having feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt most days, experiencing problems with the ability to make decisions most days, and last but the most important is having thoughts of dying. There's a tendency and a certain sentiment that people who might be suffering from depression should just snap out of it, or it's just all in your head, or just be positive. These sentiments also makes it very difficult and worse for the person suffering with depression, and the sentiments and myths reflect a deep misunderstanding of depression. Depression is an extremely common mental illness, and there are many treatments that benefit most people. So remember, if you have 5 of the above list of symptoms for 2 continuous weeks, you might be suffering from depression. But beyond all of this, what is very important for us to kind of understand so that we can have a clear definition between depression and sadness is the following. Understand the severity of the symptoms and how it's impacting your day-to-day functioning. So how severe are your symptoms? Number 2, how many number of symptoms are you experiencing from the list I just discussed? What is your total number of symptoms? And the last one is the duration of the symptoms. How long have you been experiencing these symptoms, and how consistently and constantly have you been experiencing it? These will determine whether you are depressed or whether you're just sad. Depression is primarily treated with medication, depending on the severity, counseling, and other wellness-based treatment models such as meditation, yoga, nutrition, physical exercise. All of that can kind of add to the benefit of your treatment. So with that, we come to the end of today's topic. Until we come back to you with another interesting topic, stay safe and take care.